Recently, I agreed to shoot a music video for my friends. No big crew, no fancy gear, just a simple setup. I'm really happy with the footage I captured. But now, it's time to give it that cinematic film look. And I found the perfect tool to make that happen. Stick around, and I'll walk you through my color grading process step by step, so you can learn how to turn flat footage into something that feels like film. Let's jump right in. Today, I'm reviewing a film emulation plugin I've been wanting to try for a long time. And this new music video project is the perfect chance to test it out. Dehancer is designed to bring the authentic look of film to your digital footage. It offers a wide range of film stock emulations, including classics like Kodak, Fuji, Agfa, or Rolei, each with its unique color and grain characteristics. But before we jump into the fun stuff, we need to set up our color management properly. Let's make sure the foundation is solid first. For my timeline color space, I like to work in something called DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. It gives me more flexibility by working in a larger color space. For the display color space, I go with Rec. 709 Gamma 2.2, which is a good match for most screens and online viewing. If these settings sound a bit confusing, I've made a separate color grading tutorial that breaks all this down step by step. You can check that out if you're just getting started. Alright, with that out of the way, let's have some fun and jump into grading. I've got 3 short clips from the shoot ready to go. So let's start with the first one and jump over to the color page. First things first, we need to get the footage into the right color space for viewing. I'll set up 2 conversion nodes and add a color space transform plugin onto each one. Since this music video was shot on the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro, I'm going to convert the footage from Blackmagic's log color space into my working space, DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. Then, on the second node, I'll convert it from DaVinci Wide Gamut into my viewing space, which is Rec. 709 Gamma 2.2. Now, I'll add 3 more nodes in between our 2 conversion nodes. These will be for our primary corrections: exposure, white balance, and saturation. Like I always teach on this channel, the best way to correct exposure is by using the exposure slider inside the HDR tools. For shaping the overall tonal look and contrast, I'll use the lift, gamma, and gain wheels. Next, for white balance, the most accurate way is to change the node's gamma to linear and then adjust the balance using the gain wheel. This method is much more intuitive and precise. Finally, for a small saturation adjustment, I'll change the node's color space to HSV. I'll then disable channels 1 and 3 because we only need channel 2, which controls saturation. From there, I can easily add a smooth saturation boost by adjusting the gamma or gain wheels. Now that we've got our primaries in place, let's add another node, right before our last conversion node. This is where we'll drop the film emulation plugin, Dehancer. The first step inside Dehancer is to set the correct source. In our case, that's DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. There are actually a few different ways you can set up Dehancer, and we'll explore another method in the second clip. But for now, let's stick with DaVinci Wide Gamut. I find this approach more intuitive and a lot more flexible. One more thing to keep in mind. The Dehancer plugin outputs the same color space as the source. So in our case, it should stay in DaVinci wide gamut, matching the color space we set up earlier with our conversion nodes. Now comes the fun part. In the real world, developing film is a fun, but also very tricky and complicated process. And Dehancer gives you a real taste of that, but in a much simpler way. Just like with real film, the first step is to pick your film stock. There are tons of options here, from classic still photography films to the motion picture stocks used in Hollywood movies. Now, I'm nowhere near an expert who can spot every difference between real film stocks and film emulation. But honestly, the variety and quality of the options here is just stunning. I know the Dehancer team put a lot of work into this, doing real lab-based research on genuine film stocks to make everything feel as authentic as possible. For my first clip, I'm going to try out Fuji's Eterna film stock. I love how it fits the mood of this music video. It keeps the skin tones looking natural while giving the whole image a really nice moody feel. In the Film Developer tab, you can tweak how your film stock reacts, kind of like adjusting the chemistry in a real lab. It lets you fine-tune contrast, midtones, and color in a more natural, film-like way. Perfect if your image feels a bit flat or needs a custom touch. In the Film Compression tab, you can control how highlights roll off, just like how real film handles bright areas without harsh clipping. It helps smooth out the brightest parts of your image and gives you a more natural, film-like dynamic range. In the Expand tab, you can manually set your black and white points to fit the image into your timeline's dynamic range. It's great for fine-tuning contrast after picking a film stock, especially since real film often starts off looking a bit low contrast. Next is the Print tab, and this is where the film look really starts to come together. In real life, after developing the film negative, you'd print it onto photo paper or projection film. Each print medium adds its own tone, contrast, and character to the final image. Dehancer simulates that too. You can choose between print film stocks like Kodak 2383, Fujifilm 3513, or even photo paper like Endura Glossy. For this clip, I'm pairing Eterna with Fuji 3513 print film. I've found this combo gives me the exact moody, soft-toned look I'm going for. These print options are subtle but powerful. Changing them can completely shift the mood of your image. Now let's look at the bloom effect. Bloom adds that soft glow around bright areas, like lights, reflections, or skin highlights. It's similar to what you'd get with a Pro Mist filter on set, but here it's fully adjustable in post. While DaVinci Resolve does have a built-in glow effect, I've found that Dehancer's bloom works much better. It feels more natural, blends beautifully with the rest of the film look, and just fits the image in a more organic way. Used subtly, it can add a really nice cinematic softness without overdoing it. Halation creates that signature red-orange glow around bright highlights, especially noticeable around light sources or reflections. In real film, this happens when light leaks into the emulsion layers, giving it a soft, glowing feel. Dehancer offers 4 different film profiles with 2 versions for each: Standard, with anti-halation layer, and no remjet, for more pronounced halation, as seen in older or more raw film stocks. For finer control, you can adjust how strong the halation is and how far it spreads to match your scene perfectly. This one's kind of a stylistic choice. The film damage effect lets you add things like dust, scratches, and hair to your footage. It's meant to mimic the wear and tear you'd see on old film reels, and it can give your video a vintage or grungy vibe if that's the look you're going for. There are profiles for different film formats, and you can fully customize the amount and type of damage, from subtle specks to heavy scratches. Personally, I use it very lightly, if at all, but in the right project, it can add some cool texture and nostalgia. Film breath and gate weave, 2 subtle effects that can really sell the film look when used right. Film breath simulates tiny shifts in exposure, contrast, and color from frame to frame, like what happens with real film moving through a camera. It adds a bit of organic movement to the image and makes it feel less digital and more alive. Gate weave adds slight jitter or shake to the frame, like the physical movement of film through a projector or scanner. These effects are easy to overdo, so I usually keep them super light. But when used carefully, they really help bring out that classic, imperfect feel of real film. Now, let's look at the overscan tool. This one's more of a creative effect. It simulates the look of scanned film, including the frame edges, gate borders, and even perforations. You can choose formats like Super 8, 16mm, or 35mm and adjust how much of that raw film border is visible. Personally, I might not use this effect often, but it's really well crafted. It feels subtle, organic, and it breathes like real film. That said, I did notice one downside. When you reduce the total impact slider in the output section, it also blends the overscan effect, which kind of defeats the purpose since you usually want that to stay sharp and visible. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to keep that film scan look. Next up is the vignette tool. This lets you darken or brighten the edges of your frame to subtly draw attention to the center. You can fine-tune the size, feathering, shape, and even move the vignette around if your subject isn't centered. I usually build my vignettes using DaVinci's power windows, but since this one is already built in and super easy to adjust, I'm doing it right here in Dehancer. It's a quick way to add focus and mood without setting up a separate node. You're probably wondering why I saved grain for last. Well, the truth is, grain is one of those things that doesn't show up well on YouTube. Compression usually softens or hides it completely. But when you view it at full quality, Dehancer's grain looks incredibly organic. Compared to DaVinci's built-in grain or Film Convert's plugin, this one feels the most like real film, not just digital noise over the image. What really stands out is how the grain reacts to the other adjustments you've made, like contrast, exposure, or film compression, just like real film would in a chemical process. It adds texture and movement that makes the footage feel alive, not overly processed. Alright, I think we're done with this first clip. Let's move on to the second one and try out some more amazing tools that Dehancer has to offer. There's still a lot to explore, so let's keep going. This time, I'm going to use only the Dehancer plugin. No extra nodes, just everything handled inside the plugin itself. In the Input tab, I'll select my camera, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro, and set it to Gen 5 Color Science. Here, I'll also adjust the exposure and white balance directly in Dehancer. You can totally use your own color grading workflow with Dehancer as just one part of the process. But if you prefer, you can also rely on the plugin alone, like I'm doing here. It's a really flexible tool, though I do wish it had a few more tone controls in the Input tab, like separate sliders for shadows or highlights, for finer adjustments. For this shot, I'm selecting the Kodak's Vision 3 250D film stock. It's a well-known, daylight-balanced stock used in popular Hollywood films like Interstellar or Longlegs. It's known for its clean colors, soft contrast, and natural-looking skin tones. Even though this scene was shot indoors, the natural light coming in through the windows makes this film stock a great match. In Dehancer, it gives me that same grounded filmic vibe. Perfect for scenes where I want to preserve real-world lighting, but still add some emotional texture. Right below the film stock selection, you'll see a slider called Push-Pull. This simulates what happens when you change how real film is developed, either pushing or pulling it. Pulling the film or moving the slider left increases contrast and saturation, and pushing does the opposite. It lowers contrast slightly, gives you more detail in the darks and highlights, and slightly desaturates the image. It's a great way to fine-tune the overall mood without adjusting exposure or reaching for extra grading tools. For this shot, I've found that the classic Kodak 2383 print film pairs really nicely with the Kodak's Vision 3 stock. It adds a bit more contrast and richness, especially in the midtones and blacks, without crushing the natural light feel. It's a classic look that's been used in a ton of Hollywood films, and it gives the image that final cinematic polish. The color head tool in Dehancer is based on analog film printing, where colored lights, cyan, magenta, and yellow were used to fine-tune the image. You're adjusting color pairs like yellow-blue, magenta-green, and cyan-red using real-life measured values, so the shifts feel natural and film-like. There's also a gang option to adjust all three together, plus split toning controls for shadows, midtones, and highlights. It's a subtle but powerful way to add mood, give your image more personality, and push the color beyond what the film stock alone provides. Here I'm using the vignette tool to help separate the subject from the background. It's a simple touch, but really effective for guiding the viewer's eye without making it feel obvious or overdone. Okay, I think we can move on to our last clip. I'll be using a slightly more complex node tree for this one. But don't worry, we'll go through it step by step together. Let's start with our conversion nodes, just like we did in the first clip. I'll convert the footage from Blackmagic's log color space to our display space, which is Rec 709. Since this shot looks a bit noisy to me, I'll add a node in between for some simple noise reduction. Now let's add a couple more nodes for white balance and exposure. I'll start by adjusting the exposure and overall tonal look using the HDR exposure slider and the lift, gamma, and gain wheels, just like we did in the first clip. For the balance node, I'm using the same approach as before. I'll switch the node's gamma to linear and adjust the white balance using the gain wheel. I'll add one more node for a subtle saturation boost using the HSV color space, just like we did earlier. Let's add one more node to improve our contrast. This time, I'm using a bit of a niche approach by changing the node's composite mode to overlay, and then reducing the key output gain to lower the effect's opacity. This method gives me really nice, subtle results. Perfect when I want to boost contrast without overdoing it. Now, let's add one more node and apply our film emulation plugin, Dehancer. Since we're grading in a color-managed workflow in this example, we'll set the source input to DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. For the film stock, I'll go with a classic photo negative, Kodak Gold 200. It's well known for its bright, rich, and saturated colors, with a warm, vintage feel that really stands out. And for the print, I'll pair it with Kodak's signature cinematic look, the 2383 print film. This combo gives a nice balance between nostalgic color and a polished, film-like finish. To add a subtle vintage feel to the clip, I'll enable Dehancer's halation and bloom effects. This gives the footage a soft, glowing look that adds warmth and a bit of that analog charm. And to add a final bit of spice, I'll throw in some hair and scratches using the film damage tool. It's a subtle detail, but it really helps sell the old-school film vibe. This already looks pretty nice, but I'd like to add one more node and apply one of my custom-developed LUTs. It's specifically designed for the DaVinci wide gamut color space, and it adds a subtle filmic contrast and split toning to the image. I'll dial it back a bit by reducing the key output so the effect blends in more naturally. If you're interested, you can check out my Baltic Elements LUTs pack. The link is in the description. To draw more attention to our subject, in this case, this old vintage red phone, I'll add 2 parallel nodes just before the Dehancer node. I'll use 2 different power windows to shape the light around it, helping the subject stand out more from the background. It's a subtle way to guide the viewer's eye and enhance the composition without making it feel forced. I probably should have added this earlier, or even tweaked it inside Dehancer, but let's do it now. I'll add one last node after our power windows and fine-tune the red color of the phone using DaVinci's built-in color slice tool. I'm just going to shift the red hue slightly, reduce the saturation, and bump the density up a touch. It's a small adjustment, but these little tweaks really do add up. Alright, that wraps up the grading process for this project using the Dehancer plugin. It's a powerful tool that really helped bring my footage to life with a rich, analog look. From accurate film stocks and print profiles to halation, bloom, and grain that actually feels like film. I can definitely recommend this one. I've tried a few film emulation plugins and power grades before, but this one is by far my favorite. And by the way, they also have a pretty cool iPhone app designed to bring that same authentic analog film aesthetic to your mobile photography and videography workflow. Definitely worth checking out if you shoot on your phone. Now, let's take a quick look at the pros and cons. Pros. First, the film emulation quality is top tier. The grain, halation, and print simulation all feel incredibly authentic. Second, it's modular and flexible. You can use the full pipeline or just specific tools, depending on your workflow. And finally, it integrates really well with professional color workflows, especially inside DaVinci Resolve. Cons. Now for the cons. And the first one is the price. At €400, it's definitely on the higher end for a plugin. That said, there is a subscription options available if you'd rather not commit up front. And if you're interested, I can help a little. I've added a discount code in the description that'll give you a better deal. Another small issue I noticed is with the overscan effect. When you lower the overall impact of the plugin, it also fades the overscan, which isn't ideal if you want that visible gate effect to stay intact. Lastly, I had some trouble with the masking tools. They didn't seem to work on my system. But to be fair, I'm currently using DaVinci Resolve 20 Beta, so it could be a version-related glitch or something I missed. I hope this breakdown gave you some insight into how I use Dehancer in my workflow. And if you want to see how I color grade iPhone footage, check out this next video. See you in the next one.